Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Zoom meeting. Today, we're going to be doing a seminar here with Michael Appleton on increasing your income in real estate. I'm Kyle Bouchard. I'll be the host. I'm the broker of record of International Realty Firm. We're a brokerage in Ontario, Canada, and we've been in business for about 3 years. Currently, we have about 215 agents and growing pretty steadily. So I'm going to hand this over to Michael. A little bit about him. Michael Appleton, he's one of the top real estate trainers across Canada with 3 major real estate corporations. His list of clientele includes Remax, Royal LePage, Home Life, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, and the Toronto Real Estate Board. He's empowered thousands of realtors across the country for the last 20 years. Michael is currently on the board of directors for RECO, the Real Estate Council of Ontario, and is the only person in the history of Canadian real estate to win the Real Estate Institute of Canada's Morgard Literary Award 4 times. His book, Dialogues to Success, can be ordered online at www.realestatelanguage.com and also through the Trev store. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Michael now. Michael, the floor is all yours.
Great, thanks, Kyle. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out and joining us here today. We welcome any questions that you might have. We're going to have the questions at the end of the session. We'll have some time for that. Now, we only have 1 hour together, so I'd like to jump right in. Regarding the pandemic, we'll address some issues later, but for now, let's look at the fundamentals for when things are normal. There are systems that you can employ that really are effective for increasing your income. I think you'd all agree that lead generation is the lifeblood of our business. So we're going to focus on that. Now, if you see the chart that we have projected in front of you, this is really one of my more popular seminars, the 4 pillars of income in real estate sales. And you see the pillars are the sphere of influence. People all know you by name that you've ever met. Prospecting, which I know none of you want to do. Marketing, where you throw money at a problem to generate. That includes social media. And then your client base. Now, I want to make it clear, the first 3 pillars, sphere of influence, prospecting, and marketing, with all those subheadings, those pillars exist to fund and fuel building that 4th pillar, the client base. Your long-term objective in carving out a successful career is to cultivate these systems. And remember, you must be consistent with these systems. So you being self-employed, your own boss, me incorporated, you have the luxury of picking and choosing which systems you feel suits or serves you best to generate business. But the whole logic is that each of these systems, if you do it on a consistent basis for the long term, is to fund or fuel building a rock solid empire foundation of a sizable client base where you keep in regular touch, and then you get this tipping point of a tsunami of repeat referral business pouring towards you. I find after more than 3 decades of training realtors all across Canada from coast to coast, it's interesting, having done thousands of seminars, we share a lot of good nuts and bolts information, and at least in a live audience, when I'd be in an auditorium, you'd see everyone taking copious notes and nodding dutifully and smiling and liking what they're hearing. But then if you check back in a reunion a year later, say, well, did you all do some of the simple strategies? The funny thing is suddenly nobody's looking me in the eye. They say, well, I was busy and I got on to other things. So please, it's not that complicated. As we go through it, there are these fundamentals that I'm strongly encouraging you to consider embracing. Now, I want to point out to you, under the prospecting pillar, we have 2 categories that are conveniently absent. Normally, I'd ask an audience, what do you think is missing? But I'll just spell it right out for you. The 2 that are missing from the prospecting pillar are for sale by owners and expiries. Now, the reason being, years ago, FSBOs, for sale by owners, were a juicy category. You could target market and go and get somebody's motivated to sell and get them listed on MLS. But as of a handful of years ago, when CREA, Canadian Real Estate Association, and the Competition Bureau in Ottawa were having a vicious fight discussion, where the Competition Bureau is insisting there must be more types of business models out there. Consumer public must have choices. So finally, CREA acquiesced, rolled over, showed their belly, and agreed to have it that they allow a new business model, which you're all familiar now, known as a mere posting. So mirror posting is a legitimate form of agency. It's a stripped down version of agency, but you still have it where if some consumer wants to avail themselves of a mirror posting option, pay a flat fee, upload the data MLS, and it spills out on MLS, inviting viewings and offering compensation to a cooperating broker. That is a legitimate agency contract. So you can't approach to try to get them listed. So we left FSBOs off the list because 96% of all the FSBOs out there these days tend to be mere postings, and you can't really approach them. And expires, of course, you know the TREB rules. 99% of all sellers who were on MLS have checked off the box on the data sheet saying that if this listing expires, we don't want to be contacted by any other brokerage. Our information is out there for the purposes of marketing our property, not to be canvassed by other brokerages. So, off the record, do realtors approach expiries? Yes, I guess they do. But as a director at RICO, I can't in all good conscience sanction approving of that. So I don't want to hear about it. So we had to leave it off this list. But there's plenty else here to pick from. Now, for any of you newbies, let me be clear, under the sphere of influence, listen carefully. When you first got into real estate, you were encouraged, it was recommended to you to, of course, to make a big splash announcement to everybody you know within your sphere. And that means friends, friends of friends, acquaintances, old school friends, people, co-workers you worked at a job. You were to make one big announcement saying, yes, I'm now in real estate sales, and I'd like to send you my newsletter or keep in touch. Now, that sounds simple enough. And if you look at the stats, I'm a big fan of stats. The average person, when you look at the demographics, if you tally up your dentist, your veterinarian, your car mechanic, your dry cleaner, your cousins, the rule of thumb is even if you met your next door neighbor's cousin at a barbecue a couple of times, the rule of thumb is if they would recognize your name when you send out an inquiry saying, I want to let you know I'm in real estate, I'd be glad to send you this beneficial information. Of course, you want to get their permission to be able to send the information. If the rule of thumb is if they recognize your name, even vaguely saying, well, I remember meeting Emily, well, then they deserve to have their attention flagged. And there's no limit to it. I don't care if you have an elderly aunt living over in Paris or anywhere else in the world, anybody you know. Now with our technology, of course, you want to do the blast of everybody in the world, sending them, say, a monthly newsletter or whatever. We're going to talk about that. But here's the tricky part. Let's say most people would know 120 to maybe 150 people on average. I know I've met people that know a lot more, but that's the ballpark, say 150, maybe 180. If you really dig deep into the fabric of what a brand new realtor has done, they'll openly admit to you, well, when the dust settled, I maybe splash announced to maybe 123 of the 170. I didn't get around to everybody. And then you're keeping in touch with the 120 some odd. But the trouble is, 2 long years into your real estate practice, and you're serving your apprenticeship, you've learned a lot, you're now a 2-year veteran. Let's say that you bump into one of the people you didn't tell. You're just at some occasion or you're some environment where you bump into somebody that you did not tell, but you did know them. So you're catching up on things. Hey, how are you? Hail, brother. Well met. Nice to see you. What have you been up to? And if you say to them, oh, I'm in real estate. I've been in it for 2 years now. And here's my card. Can I send you my newsletter? Studies show that if you, having just met that person 2 years into your career, acknowledge that, oh, I've been in real estate for 2 years, they'll take your card. Yes, send me your newsletter. And the trouble is that person that you just told that to will not give you the psychological credit that you've had 2 full years in real estate. They'll only remember that you've been in real estate sales from the day that you told them. They can't psychologically backdate in their mind that you're a 2-year veteran. So you're doing yourself a horrible disservice if you don't tell everybody. And I know you feel awkward about, oh, if I reach out to people on Facebook, I haven't talked to them in years since school. Oh, they're going to think, oh, the only reason she's reaching out now is because now she's in sales. Well, get past that awkwardness. Err on the side of caution of just blasting it out to everybody. And if some don't want to receive the beneficial information, fine. At least you gave it your full shot of blanketing everyone, and then you keep in regular touch. Now, here's the interesting part about the statement of keeping in regular touch. It's not an exact science. There are different studies out there as to the number of touches. We call these touches, whether it's on the phone or in person or sending a note or a text or a calendar or just your newsletter, whatever. these are all touches. Every time you flag and remind people of your existence for top of mind awareness, that's known in real estate sales as a touch, another touch. A phone call, there's a touch. A note, a text, an email, there's another touch. Now, some of you might be upset when you hear this piece of advice, but believe me, I have this on good authority as to the better number. People have debated how many times per year should there be for the touches. Now, there are some programs out there, I'm not going to mention any names, that espouse the philosophy that you should probably have maybe 34 touches per year, mixing it with, as I described, all different types of touches, but there should be a frequency of 34 touches. Now, I take a bit of a different approach because here's the distinction. If you want to send out, as I alluded to, your a nice client newsletter, there are plenty of great companies around where you can outsource and get a very business-like newsletter. It's got a nice tone to it, all about the real estate market, the economy, demographics, trends, influences to the real estate industry. And you've got your own personal blurb on it. And some good companies publish at least 6 newsletters a year, if not 12. But it'd be best if you could send one out, say, every month, like clockwork. Now, the other thing to work in tandem with that is that if you want to send out a market update to work as a 1-2 punch on this, here's the time frame. On the 7th of each month, like clockwork, you could send out, say, the Market Watch, which Tread publishes a great overview of the stats. It's very dry in tone, but it is dead on accurate. Now, if you want to cut and paste, it's a little more labor intensive, but if you want to, if somebody lives in, W4, somebody lives in E2 for district, and you want to cut and paste and send it specific to their little pocket, it's a little bit more labor intensive. But usually people that live, say, in the beach or they're out in Etobicoke, they don't mind getting an overview for everything for all of GTA. So if you don't want to do the cut and paste, but you send this information out, email it to them on a consistent basis, people love being kept apprised or informed about what's going on in all things real estate. Now, on the 7th of the month, you could send out the Market Watch. 2 weeks later, like clockwork, say the 21st of each month, you would send out, you could send out a newsletter. So Market Watch on the 7th, newsletter on the 21st, or it could be vice versa, but it's nice to gap it up by 2 weeks. So you're methodically sending out 2 touches per month, just carved in stone with laser-like focus. You have it all automated where it goes out automatically, no exceptions. You don't skip any months. You send it all out, and as you add people to your sphere or your client base, the number would expand accordingly. One other new little suggestion, this might be new to you, it's a neat little tip. Starting now for the rest of your career, every buyer client that you have a successful transaction with a buyer, and the transaction closes, and you keep in regular touch with that buyer client, then a great little strategy is every mid-January, like clockwork, without you being asked, you send a annual report, a full-blown CMA of what happened the previous calendar year on their street or in their little pocket area. Just think about it. Our financial advisors will issue us an annual little report about how our portfolio is doing. So why, us as a real estate consultant, why would we be any different that we as the real estate consultant advisor, without even being asked, would issue automatically an annual report on how one of their biggest assets is doing? So it makes perfect sense. Now, some have asked, gee, Mike, instead of mid-January, why not, here's a cute idea, why not just send them an annual report on the month when they closed on purchasing the property? Well, that's cute, but just because when they bought at the time in April or October, it doesn't mean that they're going to be predisposed to sell in that time frame years down the road when it's time to sell. Human nature being what it is, and there are exceptions depending on time frame or constraints. Most people, after living in their principal residence for years, tend to think about springtime for putting their house on the market, for downsizing or moving on to something else. Now, there could be where they're being transferred, whatever, where it would be a different time of year. But generally speaking, human nature, they tend to every spring say, well, maybe this is a good time this spring to sell. So what better time to flag their attention about the equity they're sitting on? Mid-January, you table the report, saying everything. Just want to give you, a full report of what happened in your on the market this previous year. And they will appreciate. Now, notice when I said it's an annual report. Yes, you must be consistent. Once you issue the first so-called annual report for each buyer client, then that draws a line in the sand for the rest of your career. Come hell or high water, and yes, every January you will issue a full-blown CMA to every buyer client. Don't ever skip a year because you were busy, or even if there was some family crisis. You should have everything in place for systems where it gets spit out automatically in mid-January, because this is how you're going to build the consistency of it. Now, let's just move over to well, on sphere of influence, you've also got agent referrals. Obviously, we're always so focused on consumer public. Don't forget the backdrop of casting your bread on the water to draw the attention of others at other brands or brokerages or within your network. Try to see if they can send referrals to whatever your market area is, and vice versa. Give an example. If any of us enjoy pre-pandemic, if you enjoyed going out socially to Vancouver or Calgary or out to Halifax, visit family, or just on vacation, try to carve out one extra day of that vacation and plan it up front where you book to go and see 2 or 3 of the largest brokerages in that market region. You know, dress business attire, you've arranged the appointment, go in to meet the broker of record manager, have a nice polite chat, make inroads of building a rapport relationship, just say, I want to introduce myself, appreciating referrals you could send, I'll be glad to do the same. And I know that sounds like grassroots and very simplistic, but it's amazing the number of times I've heard over the years where some realtor makes the effort of going out, and while in a big city, say Halifax or Vancouver, going in and visiting with these big offices and talking to the broker of record live and in person, chatting. And then weeks later, one of the top agents of that brokerage will talk to their manager, broker of record, and say, gee, I got a great lead for Toronto. I don't know, I'm looking through our electronic directory. They're all just faceless entities. I don't know, any good suggestions? And the manager, broker of record said, well, you know, this gal was here a couple months ago. You know, she's really dynamic. She seemed very great attitude. She'd probably give good service. So by casting your bread on the water and meeting with people and humanizing the message out there, you could end up getting a warm, fuzzy referral, which I assume you're fine with paying 25% on. So you're just proactively going out. And the nice thing is, check with your accountant. If you went out to Vancouver for an 8-day holiday, and one of the 8 days was spent on cultivating business relationships, just tell that to your accountant. You can probably write off the majority of your trip to Vancouver as a business expense for cultivating new business. Check with your accountant. You might save a few bucks that way. Now, the marketing, when it says direct mail, that's related to a farm area. When you see under prospecting, you see farming. Now, we're in a pandemic, of course, we're quite restricted. I'm just covering some fundamentals in this overview. But before the pandemic and after the pandemic goes by, or even during now, if you have a farm area, here's the rule of thumb for size. In the old days, a farm area was quite small. You pick a little geographic pocket you want to cultivate for your reputation for the long term, for the goodwill of who you are as a brand. In the old days, it was around 750, 800 houses. Now, those days are over. Now we have super farm areas where it could be 1,800, 2,500 houses. So if some of you haven't picked a farm area yet, look at it for the long term. This is why they call it farming, ladies and gentlemen. You're planting seeds for future harvest down the road. If you want to pick a farm area that's somewhat reasonably close to where you live, and you anticipate, best guess, that you're going to live there for a lot of years to come, and the reason I'm mentioning that, if you in the back of your mind think that you're in the next 5 years going to move to somewhere far away, then you probably don't want to spend a lot of sweat, toil, and effort cultivating and building up a farm area if you're just going to move away. But if your best guess is that you're going to live in the long term in this specific environment, then you pick a transient neighborhood, say 1,800, 2,500 houses, do your research on Treb, go into Stratus, and do some grunt work and see, does it have a 3 to 4% transiency over the last few years? You want to pick a farm area where there's a reasonable amount of turnover. So 3 to 4% transiency would be where, for example, every 100 houses on a street per year on average, 3 to 4 houses, 3 to 4 sales take place per 100. So you have to do a lot of boring admin work of going back over the last 5 years to track. Just pick a few different streets and just trace back as to what the frequency is. If you see there's very nominal turnover, well, you'd beat your brains out working in an area where nobody ever leaves it. Now, things can change in the long term, but it's best to pick a fairly transient neighborhood. And the thing I like, a lot of people pick the farm area. They pick their farm area to be where they actually live. They love their own neighborhood. They think, okay, great. I'd like to carve out some semblance of reputation here. I love the community. That's why I live here. But I love it when you're on a listing presentation. If you work the area, but you also live in that neighborhood. It's funny, in the listing presentation, it sounds like a selfish statement, but it's not. It really works beautifully. As you're building rapport with the sellers and they're interviewing you, and you've gone through all your benefits about how you're going to get them top dollar, reasonable time frame, fewest headaches. Right at the latter part of chatting with them, just as you're closing to get the listing, you can also allude to the fact saying, well, don't forget, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I don't just work this area. I live in this neighborhood. That's how much I believe in it. And I mean, I have a vested interest because the more money I get you for the sale of your property, the more my house goes up in value. So I have a great degree of motivation to move mountains to get you top dollar. Do you see how that'll work in your benefit? So it sounds like a self-serving statement, but actually people in the back of their mind almost chuckle with glee saying, yeah, I bet you she would work hard. It's a nice way of reinforcing that you're going to do everything possible to get the top dollar for them. So the other thing about a farm area, and I know during pandemic times, it's hard to listen to this, but simply put, and I know you don't want to hear this, but the best way to start into a farm area is that once you've chosen the geographic locale and you've decided to invest this time and energy, well then weather permitting, say spring, summer through fall, you must take your marketing brochures and get the gastitudinal fortitude, the gumption, the guts, the courage to go out and knock on all the doors in the farm area initially up front to introduce yourself to the homeowners. Now, a lot of you will avoid this like the plague. You will do everything possible to make excuses. I've seen everything in the book where people send out beautiful little linen stock, beautiful letters, beautiful for the crafting, politely introducing themselves. No, it's the coward's way out. You must humanize by breaking the ice where you go around. Now, here's the phraseology I would encourage you to use. Remember, you're going around to introduce yourself for the first time. You've decided to work this area for the long term. So you knock at the door, you politely introduce yourself. Oh, hi, John Brown, ABC Real Estate. I came around to introduce myself today because I've elected to specialize in this area from now on. And I just thought I'd like to introduce myself and give you my information and see if I can answer any questions about real estate. Do you have any questions about the market? You just start to just gently just build some subtle rapport. Don't be too pushy or anything, but listen to the phraseology. I came around to introduce myself. My name is such and such. I've elected to specialize in this area from now on. It sounds like you were just elected mayor of Toronto. Okay, so it's a nice positive statement. I've elected to specialize in this area from now on. Just decide to come around and introduce myself. Now, even if they say, yeah, I'm not interested, thank you, and they close the door, at least you broke the ice with a human interaction, that element for say 20, 25 seconds. Then after that, you send in the brochures. The rule of thumb for direct mail is at least 4 times a year, varying the message, but glossy brochures. Yes, we're all going green, and a lot of us hate the idea of these pamphlets going out, but a lot of the top people still blanket through a region because the direct mail still works, even though it seems like a terrible waste. But it only works if they're already known as a recognizable entity. So there's a lot of schlepping around, where you've knocked on the doors and they see you carting around and signs going up on front lawns and you holding open houses for if we get back to that. And it's got to be that you serve a type of apprenticeship. Because here's the thing, even if you've got deep pockets, and you wanted to skip the door knocking and you want to do a billboard, which if you see under marketing, you'll see where it has things like billboards or bench recycling bins. But these big billboards are on top of buildings. If you want to try to dominate a market area, and these things aren't cheap, these billboards top of building, 8 to 10 grand a month, and you have enough money that you think I'm going to make a big splash announcement and I'm going to have my billboard, my face and a message just to announce that I'm now working this little pocket neighborhood. Really, it's just money wasted because think about it. If the average consumer is driving home or returning home after being out and they're sitting in their car at a stoplight waiting and all tired, bleary-eyed after a long day at work, and they look up while they're waiting for the light to change and they see your smiling countenance on some billboard on top of a building and they've never heard of you before, then what are you hoping is going to happen? Do you think the average consumer, never having heard of you, is going to look up, see your smiling face with your name and say, hey, where's that realtor been all my life? Start drooling at the mouth and pick up the phone and call you? No, it doesn't work that way. Just like Coke and Pepsi, they spend all the money where we all know it, but they keep reinforcing the goodwill of their brand. in a farm area, if you drive through any neighborhood and you see these big billboards, they only work for the people that have already served the apprenticeship, have been seen in action, already built some semblance of reputation in the market area. And that way it's reinforcing you for the goodwill of you as a real estate entity. Otherwise, I wouldn't waste a dime on any of that type of marketing. They have to know you. Now, as far as for the marketing with the social media. Okay, obviously now during the pandemic times, the social media, here's the interesting thing. Being on the board at RECO, we get bombarded with every report pertaining to the industry, everything under the sun. Actually, they show us everything for all across Canada into North America. I know social media is so amazing. It's transformed the world, staggering for the implications. The most recent report, and I'm sure you recognize this instinctively, the best bet, and according now, of course, during the pandemic, great to keep in touch just through social media. Facebook and Instagram seem to be the best bang for your buck, where that's great for targeting and for getting lead generation. The only thing about social media, even the top people acknowledge that they have to spend a fair amount of money on lead generation, including for lead generation companies, and what they get for leads that they glean, and they've got a comprehensive list of so-called leads, and then they have to scrub the leads and make sure that they're half decent. You have to sift through quite a bit to get to some half decent meat for the lead generation. But it is apparently Facebook and Instagram would be the best part of social media. Now, as far as with the pandemic, I'd like to think that you've already done this, but you can't go back in time. But as soon as the pandemic hit, and for about the first month, we were all licking our wounds and retreating and thinking, what do we do now? And then you saw how busy 2020 has been for market activity. The nice thing to do with your sphere of influence or whatever number in your client base is that probably after that first month, hopefully you would have at least written an email to everyone, personalizing it, just saying, John, could be somebody in your sphere of influence. We're going through such challenging times right now. You were in my thoughts. I just wanted to, hope you're well. Just wanted to just reach out and say hello, see how things are going. So you would fire that off. Could be a text, but if you're just firing off that little missive where you're saying, we're all going through such challenging times right now. You were in my thoughts. I hope you and family are doing well. I just wanted to just reach out and say hello. And then say, I'll call you the next couple of days. Maybe we have time to chat and catch up on things. And then let's face it, you get a lot of people at home these days. And it's a nice one too, where you just flag them about a nice, gentle hello, hope you're keeping well, and I'm thinking of you. And then in conjunction with that, you would then call and have a chat, ask all about them. And then, of course, just out of social reciprocity, they would in return, just out of politeness, say, well, why and how are you? And, what's going on in real estate? And then you can just talk about, how busy you are. And if they say anything along the lines of, gee, really, I heard it really slowed down, you just say, really, I've never been busier. Everyone admires and respects a busy professional. So you just say, no, really, I've never been busier. So that's a nice touch that way. Now, as far as the client base, you talk about event marketing, relationship selling. Event marketing, you can do your Zoom meetings, etc., and different social events online. But otherwise, in normal times with event marketing, you would have, say, it could be a client appreciation event. But what you can do is you can put on 1 or 2 events per year. Now, this is where, let's just push pandemic aside, just in general. With no pandemic to worry about, a lot of good realtors would have different type of events. Now, it doesn't have to be real estate related. You have it where people invite them to a movie afternoon at a cinema, at a Cineplex, where 11 a.m. showing, and invite the families out, and you provide refreshments. Could be a hockey skating party, could be a party in a park. Now, more business-like in tone, and you can even do this now over Zoom. If you want to arrange through the banks, and you have any number of affluent clientele, you could arrange the banks that any of the charter banks, Royal Bank, CIBC, TD Canada Trust, if you can arrange through their head office that if one of their senior economists could give a lecture to your clients about future economic trends or how the pandemic is influencing the economy. Usually, if you can wend your way through the murky waters of the red tape and bureaucracy of these charter banks, even pre-pandemic, if you'd politely ask saying, can we get one of your senior economists to come out and give a lecture at an event I'm having for my clients, the banks will usually rubber stamp and allow it, and don't charge you a fee because they're just happy for PR to have 30 consumers of the public in a room listening to an expert from, say, Royal Bank. So it's just good for the PR of the bank. So pre-pandemic days or post-pandemic days, if you just want to book a library meeting space, serve up light refreshments of tea, coffee, juice, and once you've booked the economist, which you have to book them months ahead of time, you could just put out a blast saying, yes, we're having Ms. Jennifer Morrison, senior economist for Royal Bank, giving a lecture on this date. RSVP seating is limited. On future economic trends. Don't talk about investing. Nobody wants to hear about it. It's boring. Just a nice working title would be to have the economists talk about future economic trends. A lot of people find that type of title rather titillating. Now, as to the numbers, we're hoping that you could see this. Just give me a minute. Okay, now, as far as for the numbers here, you've got your sphere of influence, you've got the pillars in prospecting, marketing, and client base. But the thing is, let's say, here's how the numbers track. If you've got, say, 180 people in your sphere of influence, and you keep in regular touch with them like I've suggested. Now, I'm saying the 24 touches per year. I think if you get up to 34, 35, I think that's overkill. For the Canadian market, if you're going to virtually 3 times a month, get into the strategy of saying, hi, happy Thanksgiving, happy anniversary, happy birthday, happy Groundhog Day, happy Tuesday, it's overkill for the Canadian market. It might work in the US, but I think 34 is excessive. It smacks of hucksterism. It's hard-nosed sales, strong-arm tactics. But if you were going to simply do the 24 touches per year, and you've got 180 in your sphere of influence, the way the numbers track is that usually maybe 1 in 20 of your sphere of influence may refer somebody to your real estate practice. So if 1 in 20 out of 180 per year on average would send you a lead, obviously 1 in 20, okay, so what do you got there? That's 9 leads. So 9 leads, the ratio is that if it's a warm lead, which in your sphere of influence, it is a warm lead because somebody that knows you and trusts you, has vouched for you with goodwill is saying, oh, you should give Mary a call, you know, a realtor I know. And then when they call Mary, it's already warmed up for rapport or goodwill because you have a friend within that sphere vouching for your services. So if out of 180, 1 in 20 vouch for you, you get 9 leads, you tend to close 1 in 3. You'll get 1 transaction out of 3 leads. Now, some people ask, why out of 3 would you only get 1? Well, I think the veterans listening in today will attest to the fact real life, what happens is that you get 3 leads in good faith, but it ends up once you explore them and cultivate them and make inroads of relationship building and sniffing out the dynamics for motivation, usually out of 3 leads, somebody might change their mind, or it ends up they have a different agenda, or their motivation isn't sufficient as compared to what you were told initially up front, or they stab you in the back, go with another realtor for some other personal reason. It ends up that based on the law of compensation, for every 3 leads you get in sphere of influence, when the dust settles, you tend to close 1 in 3. That's what you can pretty much bank on with any type of half-decent skill set. So if you close 1 in 3 with 9 leads, that's 3 lumps of commission right there. Well, you can't live on that. Now, over to your client base, let's just picture, some of you might be fairly new, but in all fairness, some probably listening in could be 15, 20 years in the business. Let's say somebody's been in real estate for 9 years. So after 9 years of full-time effort, I'm just picking this figure to be realistic. If you've been really diligent and really disciplined, let's say you've had 270 transactions. So 270 transactions after 9 long years of really plowing along, making a concerted effort. You keep in touch. Now, the beauty of this is that the newsletter and market watch that you send to your sphere of influence, those consumers, it's the exact same material you send to your client base. It's market watch and your client newsletter. I love the fact you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You send the same beneficial marketing material or informative material to your client base. That's a consumer. This is a consumer. These just happen to have had a transaction with you. So out of 270 that you know, you send it 24 touches, and your buyers would have that 25th touch of being an annual report in January. The stats are better. Actually, in your client base, if they admire and respect you as a real estate practitioner, you tend to get maybe 1 in 10. Over here, it's 1 in 20 because they don't. These people in your sphere haven't tested the water and tasted your quality service. Whereas your client base, being suitably impressed, they will give you more referrals. It's frequency of 1 in 10. So if 1 in 10 out of 270 send somebody to your real estate practice, that's 27 leads given to you. And the same ratio applies because it's a warm, fuzzy pillar. Just like these people know and have vouched for you, these clients will say, yeah, I've worked with Sally, she's a great realtor. So it's still a 1 in 3 close because it's a warm and connotation type of category. So if you close 1 in 3 out of 27 leads, well, there's 9 lumps of commission. Now remember, you've been in it for 9 years to get to this type of benefit. So 9 lumps of commission, 3 lumps, that's 12. But that's still not enough money. I assume you'd want to make more. But to be brutally honest with you, yes, marketing, it comes down to social media, what you can cultivate from social media and from, say, the farm area. That would be the spillover or adding to the aggregate total. So if you've got where marketing social media, when the dust settles, maybe you could attribute possibly 3 to 4 transactions. Maybe some of you are doing better than that, but 3 to 4 is a reasonable guesstimation. Your farm area, and if some of you think in your farm area that oh, I live in this area, but I'm worried about, there are big names in the area. How can little old me make inroads? Don't worry about it. Even if some people already seem to have an iron lock on that farm area, the maximum that most top agents can get out of one geographic region would be a total of 20%. They can, if they do everything to perfection, they maybe get 20% of a market region. So if you can manage to carve in and be consistent with your farm area and get 10%, even half of that, well, if it's 2,500 houses, or say 2,000 houses, 3% transiency, meaning what? So the 3% of 2,000, okay? So 3 per 100, 30 per 1,000, so 60 transactions, and you get 10 of those, there's 6 lumps of commission just by having 10% of your farm area market share. So that starts to add up to the aggregate total. Social media we've accounted for. Now, that's all well and good, but the other thing, if you look at prospecting, okay, here's a suggestion which is going to pull you out of your comfort zone, but it's going to help you make more money. Now, we've gone through these other systems that we've talked about, and in the prospecting one, for example, when I talked about knocking on doors in the farm area and you're thinking, oh, geez, do we really have to do that in 2020? And yes, in a farm area, you have to make that initial introduction. But just as an additional system, I'm going to share one with you. I've been teaching this for years, and actually Joe Stumpf was teaching it recently in one of his webinars. So I'm gratified that, most trainers are on the same page for these different strategies. There's something known as sweet spot selling, where I know a realtor in Agincourt, Ontario, makes a handsome living just with this one little strategy. Now, this is pre-pandemic. Nobody's suggesting you do this now, but I want you to tuck in the back of your mind for future reference. Once we get through the carnage of this period of time, which is an anomaly, it's a one-off. I'll tell you what my friend in Agincourt does. Yes, as a trainer, it'd be easy for me to say to any realtor, yeah, go out and knock on doors, door knock on, nice days, nice weather, and just see who's thinking of selling. Well, you could beat your brains out doing it that way. But the thing about sweet spot selling is that my friend, my associate in Agincourt, what he does, he's with one brand name. He then will look at, in his market pocket, he'll watch judiciously what's coming up on MLS. And every week, if he spots 2 fresh MLS residential listings that pop up with other brokerages, not even with his brand, but just with different companies, my associate friend thinks, well, what are the odds that those listing agents would have the gumption, the courage to knock on any doors? Probably 0. So if the one listing pops up on Tuesday, the other one on Thursday, and these signs are now on the front lawn in a fairly transient neighborhood, my associate friend then times it so that Saturday, if you can work on a Saturday, some people aren't working on Saturdays, that's understandable, but if you can work on a Saturday, from 12 noon to 4:30 in a 4.5-hour block, and this is one of the most important blocks of his entire week, my friend will go and inspect each of those listings to take a look at them, never mind virtual tour, but he actually goes and takes a look at them. You could do it on virtual if you'd like, but then just picture it. You've got the sign on the first listing on the front lawn, say it's 34 Elm. On a beautiful, bright, clear Saturday afternoon, my friend takes his marketing brochures and he knocks on 10 doors on either side of that fresh sign with the other brand and 20 doors across from there. So all around the perimeter of this fresh sign with ABC or Smith Real Estate, 10, 10, and 20 doors. So he knocks on 40 doors all around within eyeball sight of this sign. And the logic is that if any other homeowner on the street living nearby to this sign popping up on the Joneses' front lawn, if anybody else nearby has been sitting on the fence, mulling over and deliberating about possibly selling, it's interesting. Studies show that when these people who are thinking about selling come home that first night from their respective jobs and see that sign 3 doors down on the Joneses' front lawn, if these people have been thinking about it, they'll say to each other, hey, honey, you see the Joneses, they put their house up for sale. Remember we were talking about wanting to sell? Maybe this is the best time on the market. Or they say to each other, remember we wanted to sell? Hey, now that the Joneses have put their house up, why don't we put our house up at the same time? Same crop of buyers coming through both properties. Our house is much nicer for aesthetics. We'll look favorable in comparison. We'll make more money. So they have this conversation with each other because that sign was the catalyst to cause them to chat like this. Now, it has to be that they're predisposed or predisposition of maybe wanting to sell. But that sign on the neighbor 4 doors up is more compelling to push their buttons to take effective action than any dinner party conversation with close friends, any newsletters from a realtor, chatting with realtors at open houses. If the Joneses are selling and the Browns were thinking of it, by the Jones putting the sign up, it pushes the buttons of these other people saying, well, maybe this is a good time. So you're shooting fish in a barrel of going around and knocking on 10, 10, 20 doors on each side, 20 across, so 40 doors. And I'll admit in this day and age, in a regular market, never mind pandemic, if you're knocking on doors around a fresh sign on a Saturday, which is a great module of time because you catch a lot of people home, a lot of people peek out the curtain, there are cars in the driveway, they won't come to the door, they're all scared witless of answering the door. But if you knock on 40 doors, maybe you'll talk to maybe 11 or 12 people in that circumference, in that little pocket. And you're simply saying, ABC Real Estate, just come around. We have a busy market. Are you thinking of selling in the future? Do you know anybody else who might be thinking of selling? So you're just asking the typical type of inquiries. Now, sometimes if they give you a gruff answer saying, well, look, there's a sign for sale. There's a sign. I mean, why don't you sell those before you come around bugging us? And your effective response would be, well, the reason I'm here today, any buyers we're working with have seen what's current properties that are on the market. It doesn't suit their needs. And they've asked us to come out and just see if anybody else might be thinking of selling in the near future. It just proves, sir, that you live in a very high demand area. Really, it's a compliment to the neighborhood. Why, do you happen to know anybody else who might be thinking of selling? And you segue over back to asking that simple second question. So you give them a nice pat on the back. Hard for them to be mean to you after you give them a compliment about the area. Now, invariably, say you talk to 11 or 12 people in that pocket around the first sign. Then you go and stop and have a little tea, coffee, or water and just rest for a bit. Then you scoot over a few streets over to the second sign, the other listing, and you repeat the process of 10, 10, 20 doors, 40 around that. You talk to maybe 12 or 13 people. So this is why it takes from 12 noon to about 4:30. But I can assure you, based on the law of compensation, especially around a fresh sign, if you keep knocking on enough doors on that Saturday with the goal of not stopping till you talk to 25 people total, so maybe 11 or 12 around this sign, another 12 or 13 around that sign, the aggregate total is 25, shut it down, 25 people face-to-face around a fresh sign, and you do this for 4 Saturdays in a row. Ergo, 4 Saturdays, 25 times 4, you talk to 100 people face-to-face around fresh signage. You will get 3 to 4 good leads. Now, 3 to 4 good leads in the prospecting pillar, it's not 1 in 3 leads that you close, it's 1 in 4 because it's a cold contact. You don't have anybody vouching for you. So you're not being vouched for by your sphere or your client base. So you close 1 in 4. So if you get 3 to 4 good leads around a fresh sign, should equate to 1 fresh motivated listing. Now, if any of you skeptics out there doubt what the advice I just gave you, I can prove what I'm suggesting to you. Even if you doubt this, just think of your own life experience. Never mind what I just gave for advice. Just picture your own memory. Have you ever, even as a consumer, before you got into real estate, have you ever driven down through side streets of resale pocket neighborhoods and you happen to be driving down on a beautiful bright afternoon and you see a fresh brokerage sign on a front lawn of, say, at 27 Mayborn Avenue. So then you keep going and you just go to wherever you're running an errand. Then a week and a half later, for some reason, personal matter, you happen to drive down Mayborn Avenue again. And invariably 4 times out of 5, what do you see a week and a half later? You see a week and a half later where that sign's still there, maybe with a sold sticker, but usually within about 5 doors down either way, boom, another brokerage sign has popped up on another front lawn, and it's never with the same name of that brand. It's always invariably some other brand. So either this sign popped up and pushed the buttons of those people, and they called a realtor that met them at an open house, has been sending off a newsletter ever since, an e-newsletter, or that sign popped up and some proactive assertive agent with another brand has knocked on the doors and targeted finding this hot lead, all because this sign pushed their buttons. Don't you find it sweet revenge that realtors working your market area, their latest piece of inventory, the sign on the front lawn is the catalyst to push the buttons of your next newfound client? Success is the best revenge. So if this realtor in your market area goes, aha, I got a piece of inventory you don't, and here's the sign, then you capitalize on their fear of not wanting to knock on doors. So you knock on the doors, capture that hot lead that was only brought to life because of this being the catalyst, and then you've got a fresh piece of inventory there. Not to mention, every time you get a listing in general, you should be going out and knocking on the doors, promoting this property, and finding if that's good enough to push the buttons of anybody else possibly thinking of wanting to sell. So you've got to have the consistency with this. The social media, Facebook, Instagram, you've got to scrub the leads. Okay, now, during this pandemic, I would suggest that from a grassroots approach, you would be doing 5 phone calls a day, tied into about keeping in touch and hope you're well and how's the family. 5 phone calls a day, 5 texts a day, 5 emails a day. Now, sure, right away you say, well, gee, want to be better? Come on, I'm willing to go for the gusto. Why not 20, 30 per day of each? That's fine. Set whatever number you feel comfortable with. But even if some of you right now just nod and say, well, 5 a day, that's a walk in the park. Let's check back in 3 weeks and see whether you diligently and in a disciplined manner did 5 phone calls per day, 5 texts, and 5 emails, obviously to different people in each category, just to cultivate and cast your bread on the water to chat to these different people. It's interesting. Now, you see, back to the prospecting pillar. As far as telephone canvassing, those days are over. Nobody's suggesting you do the telephone canvassing other than keeping in touch with your sphere or your client base. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Everybody hates it. The open houses for the public, it's going to be interesting whether that ever comes back. I think everyone's gotten quite comfortable with doing virtual open houses. And when things are settled down and you can go back to open houses, you might see a smattering of them. Here's my suggestion, and some of you may disagree. There are 2 disciplines on conducting an open house for the public. You get a fresh listing, you promote and advertise it, you've got your signage out. People are pulling up and walking in through the front door. Now, you've got some realtors who have been taught or trained to stand at the door like a soldier, like a sentry, blocking entry and saying, yes, we need a full record of who's coming through. Okay, we need to see identification, retinal scan, fingerprint. Okay, sign the registry. Are you working with an agent? Okay, you can begrudgingly come in. Feeling legally they have to protect the environment. There's the second discipline where you don't block entry. Let them come in, walk around at leisure, hand them a feature sheet, just chat with them, keep a good physical distance, demonstrate the property. Oh, you live in the area, how long you been looking? Just keep it very low-key, rapport. And then at the end of the interaction, after you've behaved in a very consultative, professional, diplomatic manner, sharing your knowledge and expertise about market area and what they're looking for, and you've built some semblance of rapport, just as these consumers are on the lip about to walk out the door, and you've had 5 or 6 minutes to build a rapport with them, then you say to them at the end of that chat discussion, you know, from our chat, I think I have a pretty good idea what you're looking for. You know, I specialize in this area. We have such a busy market. If I see any property come up in the next few weeks, it might even be on an exclusive basis. I could flag your attention to that property. Would you like me to do that for you? Now, I'll repeat this. You're saying from our discussion, I think I have a pretty good idea of the property you're looking for. I specialize. I work this area exclusively. You know, if I see any property come up, not even on MLS, it might even be an exclusive listing. If I see a property that suits your needs, I could flag your attention to that property. Would you like me to do that? Now, if they're working with a realtor, even though that's a technical piece of verbal bait that you just shared to titillate them and maybe give you the true contact name or email or phone number or cell number, if they're working with a realtor, that's where they will probably unabashedly say, well, hey, that sounds great, but no, we're working with a realtor. And that probably rings true, because why would they turn down such a tempting piece of verbal bait? But if they're not working with a realtor, and let's face it, how many people are really signed up under an ironclad buyer agency agreement? That's where they think, oh, well, you know, she seems very professional, not too pushy, seems to know her stuff. oh, has her finger on the pulse of the hidden market. Okay, and begrudgingly, they think this all in 1 second. They begrudgingly drop their barrier of cynicism and say, okay, here's our email, here's our cell number. Yeah, yeah. And they feel, okay, here's another oar in the water of, another feeler out of maybe getting the jump on a piece of real estate because she works this area. Maybe she'll hear about an exclusive listing. So nice way of getting the true contact information, because if you at the front door bar entry and saying, we must have your name in a registry, the seller needs a full record of everybody coming through, please sign in. They say, if you're insisting and ripping information from a consumer you just met, well, then you know what's going to happen. They're going to say, oh yeah, sure, you want a name? I'll give you a name. Okay, Chester Field, Jim Bag. Now, if they lie up front because of your pressure tactics, and then you walk around through the house and you get along famously with them, what are the odds that this consumer is going to come clean after 5 or 10 minutes and say, oh, by the way, we lied up front, here's our real name, because they're so impressed with you? That's not going to happen. You see, it sounds old school, but if you're going to pop the question, I'd like to think that there should be a courtship involved before you pop the question. So the two disciplines are strong arm, ripping information from people, being invasive and pressure oriented right up front. Not a good beginning step if you're going to meet these people and have them as a client for life. No, just nice rapport, warm fuzzies, talk knowledgeably about the market. And then at the end of the interaction, as they're just about to walk out the door, you hook them with that piece of verbal bait saying, I know what you're looking for. I can flag you. Would you like me to do that? And if they agree to that and give you the true information, then do research. And by Monday evening of the next day, fire off 2 or 3 properties by email saying, well, here are 3 properties, basically what you're looking for. I'm going to call you this evening, get your thoughts on this. And then you call them with the phone call. But in the email, it flags them that to expect your call so that you don't take them abruptly or surprise them. So you send the information and then follow up that evening with the phone call saying, yeah, the properties I sent you, can I get your feedback? Well, that one we already saw in an open house. That one doesn't really suit our needs, but this one looks interesting. We'd like to see this one. Okay, when can we arrange to go and see it? And then you go and meet with them. Now, please, with buyers, if you're going to work with a buyer, the 2 factions in our business are buyers and sellers. You want to get good listing inventory, the stock on the shelf, best use of your time. See, the thing is right now while we're chatting, taking our most valuable commodity, our time, to talk about making money in real estate, your listings out there right now are working on your behalf. So while you're busy enjoying life, quality time with family, your inventory is out there marketing you with high profile exposure on realtor.ca, on social media, on getting sign and marketing advertising calls. So you're a high profile agent, whereas as a buyer agent, you're driving around, really, you're a secret agent. The only one knows of your existence for that moment is the consumer sitting in the car with you as you go to look at properties. So, and when the property sells, it's the listing agent gets to brag, legal bragging rights, and the marketer saying, I just sold this for top dollar over asking in 2 days. Whereas the buyer agent gets to kick around the neighborhood saying verbally, yeah, I participated in the sale. Which is no way to promote yourself. So you're better to be the listing agent. It's a better use of your time compared to working with the buyers. Okay, so my strongest recommendation is to focus the main brunt on getting listing inventory. Now, if you were to do that around the fresh signs like I suggested, every 4 Saturdays gives you 3 to 4 leads, which equates to 1 listing, and you do it for, say, through spring, summer, fall, that's 1 listing per month. You'd probably have 8 listings over the span of spring, summer, fall, 8 listings, and they're mostly motivated. Let's say 7 of them sell. Here's my strongest suggestion. If the veterans know this, if you have 7 listings from that along with your other efforts, so you have a total of 10 listings being proffered on the professional market. Like I just described, you're high profile and you're getting calls and inquiries. Any veteran real estate will attest to the fact that if you have 8 to 10 listings out there on the market, high profile as bait, you're going to get so many inquiries and calls. You're going to get a lot of spillover business. So not only do you sell 7 of the 8 of these, but probably by having all that inventory, you're going to get at least another 6 to 8 lumps of commission. So if you add it up between the 3 over there, the 3 and 9 makes 12. 12 and 7 is 19, but then 25, 30, you're probably going to have about 30 transactions, 30 lumps of commission based on this framework of what I've just outlined. Now, some of you watching today, maybe you're already knocking out of the park and have 48 to 50 transactions. Some of you are struggling to piece together maybe 18 per year. I'm just giving you a template as an example. So if you want to go for 50 or 60, then you just expand the parameter of the numbers. And if you're at 18, I've already described the numbers of what you would have to do in order to achieve the approximation of, say, 30 lumps of commission per year. which is, even in this day and age, is a sizable income and nothing to be sneezed at. So that's my simple 1 hour overview, but we're leaving 5 minutes at the end, or 10. I'm glad to stick around as long as you have questions. Kyle, I'm not sure if we have any questions at this point.
Yeah, great. We actually do have one question, a few questions here. What is the other best way to get listings other than door knocking? They were asking.
Well, here's an example. Okay, when I said about the phoning, especially now, here's a suggestion, and it's really unique, but in this day and age, we have the software programs where you can get reverse directories for landlines. And yes, I'm the first to acknowledge the majority of people have dropped landlines and have cell phones. But what's interesting, if you're working central Toronto and you're trying to cultivate reputation through a condo complex of 2 or 3 buildings, and you can't knock on any doors, and you wouldn't want to anyway, if you can get the reverse directory, which you can pay money and get, and a lot of people in some of the older condo buildings still have a landline for pizza delivery and all the rest, and the walls are too thick for cell reception. And I admit a good number of people living in the building will have cell phones. But if you get any published phone number of people living in these units in a condo building, you could phone up all through the building, politely introduce yourself, and say, yes, I work the building complex. I'd like to offer the following beneficial service. With me working this building complex, one of the services I offer, free, no obligation, would you like to be kept informed of any unit that comes up for sale on MLS in your building? And out of anybody you call on those landlines, if you get maybe 13 or 14 little footholds where some of these people in units say, yeah, I'd like to be kept informed, then you just go into Stratus and you just go to the prospect match, and you can just do those buildings, and you just have to note in your planner that every 3 months you have to go and extend it for another 3 months so it doesn't expire. And if you have 14 footholds in a little condo complex of people where they get information from you automatically, and it flags you when a listing comes up, gives you a reason to call them back and talk about it, you will eventually get some leads from that and start to make some semblance of inroads into a condo complex. And then if you'd like, you can even, once you have a client under your belt, or you know anybody in the building, see if you can book the party room and have a social event of having an interior decorator come in and give an idea about how to redecorate any of their condo units and have a nice little social do with light refreshments. So there's an example for condos.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think also a good way is, a lot of our business comes from referrals, and it comes to some of the best ways, right? So
believe me, I agree completely. Referrals are really the heart of it all. Between your sphere of influence and your client base, you very much want to have the referrals sent to you. But here's the interesting part, Kyle, I'm sure you'd agree with me. Lately, there's an ideology where you've got your clients that are satisfied, and then you're hoping that they would at least be loyal to you, but you very much want to provide such a level of quality service that they're not just satisfied and loyal to you. You want every one of your clients to be an advocate for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, you want them to be an advocate, singing your praises where they go to a dinner party or chatting with friends. If they're just satisfied or loyal, and a friend of theirs says, well, I live in your area and I'm going to be selling my house, loyal would be where they say, well, I know an agent you should maybe give a call to. That's loyal. But if they're an advocate for you and the friend at the dinner party says, I want to sell my house, that's where somebody loyal to you say, oh, well, you've got to talk to my agent. She's the best agent in Toronto, and her name is Sally Henderson. And here's her name. I can't say enough good things. She's the best thing since sliced bread. And you want them to be your cheerleader, touting and singing your praises.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of the main things is keep in touch with all of your previous clients as well, and any prospects, anyone you've met, anything like that. Keep an email list because that's your business. Like your list is your business. Otherwise, you don't have anyone to market to, right? So I like what you said about keeping in touch with your clients monthly, like clockwork, and so you think definitely it's better over email for this, or do you think like physical mail updates to your clients is better, or both, or?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on your demographic. Lately, what we find is that the sizable portion of your client base or your sphere would probably be electronically. But if you even sense, even in 2020, there's a small faction, or they're in a category that by sending a hard copy by snail mail where it might be by snail mail with an actual physical copy, because it might have a better shelf life where people in that environment will pick it up and look at it, and it gets exposed to more sets of eyes in that little pocket. And some people, even in this day and age, like to get an actual newsletter, physical hard copy. So just use your own judgment of who you think would mostly probably be electronic, and that small smattering of people that would probably be a hard copy.
Right. Yeah, I know. I have hundreds of people from the past in my database, so it's not difficult to do. Over the few years, you can definitely build up quite a few hundred people and prospects in your list.
You can, and here's another suggestion. Some of us have been guilty where, in spite of our best intentions, we've kept in touch with a good portion of it, but there is a certain faction that we have to admit to ourselves, gee, I haven't called some of these people in the longest time. Now it's going to be embarrassing. How do I suddenly just call up and say hello after a big chunk of time has gone by? Well, the most positive approach is to fire off an email to them, not a text, but an email just saying, oh boy, it doesn't take time for the years to fly by. I've been so busy on a handful of the projects in real estate, and I'm just finishing up some of them, and I'm just looking over my records and realize that it's been a long time since we chatted, so I just wanted to touch base and say hello. So just allude to the fact that I've been busy on a number of these big projects in real estate, and some of them are coming to an end, so it gave me a moment to just review my records, and I came to the realization, holy smokes, we haven't talked in a while. And I just wanted to reach out and say hello and hope you're keeping well.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just keeping in touch is key. Absolutely.
Now, here's the other thing. One other suggestion with telephone canvassing. With everything we've described, if you can just be diligent and very quick and on top of things to return calls, if you get any leads from everything you're doing, it's very important that you respond in a very time-sensitive manner, because everybody's spoiled these days. If they don't get an answer from you within about 5 minutes, they're going to go to somebody else for that answer. But here's a neat little strategy. And if any of you out there just want to just dip your toe in the water for this, I'd like to get your feedback on it. If you get the software of the reverse directory for streets, and it gives you the published phone numbers, here's Kyle, I'd be interested if you've ever heard this one. You print off maybe 10 or 20 streets in your market area. You do a reasonable scrubbing of the list where that software will flag in red who's on the do not call registry, so you don't call them. Yeah. RICO does expect you to also go on MLS to see who's currently listed under agency. God forbid you call somebody under agency that's listed right now in the market. So you scrub, say, Browning Avenue, where flagged in red, do not call, who's currently listed or just sold. And once you scrub the list, if you've got, say, 38 or say 50 names remaining of surnames and phone numbers that are fair game, you print off a hard copy of that piece of paper. I'll just show you here. Let's say on a piece of paper, you've got the 50 names that are fair game. What you do is you print off a hard copy, take a black marker like this, you go down about halfway, ignore the top 25 names, draw a thick line, just focus on the bottom 25. Then you take a yellow highlighter and you highlight the 8 or 10 impossible to pronounce surnames at the bottom of the list and just call those names. So at the bottom of a street, just call the 8 names that are virtually impossible to pronounce, because all your competitors at the other brands calling the street, they get about halfway down the list and abandon it in frustration. But even if they prevail to the bottom part, we always think in sales, you must use a person's name as the most beautiful sound in the world. People love hearing their name being used. Well, it's not a cardinal rule, but your competitors with their empathy, when they see a really difficult name, they go, oh, I'm not going to call that, I'll butcher it. And they skip it and they instinctively go to the next name. So these people with the really tough names never get a call from a broker. You don't have to worry. They're not going to bark at you and say, why do people keep calling? They never get a call from a brokerage.
Right, yeah.
And you don't have to butcher the name. Just call, it rings 4 times, deep voice answers. Hello, and you say, yes, hello, sir, ABC Real Estate. No, it's ma'am. Okay, well, do you want to sell? So,
yeah
no big deal. Yeah, well, it is. It's a neat little tip, because if you call 8 or 10 tough names on 20 streets, so you call that number, you will get some leads.
Excellent. Okay, yeah, just one thing to note there, the do not call list, there is some pretty hefty fines involved.
Yeah.
So we do have to make sure we scrub that for sure.
Please be diligent. Yeah, please be very careful. And the nice thing about the software, it does flag in red everybody that's on the do not call registry. Do not call those. Please look up and see who's currently listed. You don't want to call it. So they call it scrubbing the list. You want to scrub the list, and the remaining names are fair game. And you look for every excuse in the world. Your empathy, you think, oh, I don't like getting telephone canvas, so I don't want to do it. But as an experiment, just try what I just described. I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, do 50 to 100 and see what your percentage is on conversion, and see how it goes. And then if it's working well, then keep going with it.
And you can be assured that these people with tough names very rarely get telemarketed by anybody about duct cleaning or driveway paving or anything. People don't want to try to embarrass themselves on mispronouncing the name.
Right. Just as some people that may not know, how do you do the scrubbing for the do not call list? Is there a website that they can go to for this?
I haven't checked recently, but if you just look it up, 411.ca, but I'm not sure what the latest company would be, but and I don't think it's cheap. So some of them, the agents may want to co-op and group together and pay a little bit each to have access, and just make sure that you're not calling the same streets. But if you want to target different condo buildings, and each of them lays claim to. But the funny part is, if 10 of our agents co-op, each paying a tenth to get the software program, I can bet money that, to be brutally honest, not to be cynical, but a year later, 3 of them are probably using it on a consistent basis. The other 7 who chipped in money have found every excuse in the world not to get around to doing it, and they're practicing avoidance behavior. Yeah,
exactly. That's something. If anyone's interested, you can contact me directly, and we can work on that and get groups together. Other than that, we have another question about lead generation and everything. We actually have within the brokerage a leads team. So
right.
We charge a small monthly fee for it if you want to join in, and we just make sure that anyone that's joining in is serious about it. And then we take all of the money that we generate from it. We pool that into a large number of online leads that we get, some from Facebook and Google in different areas. And then we have training involved and everything else. So that's one system that you can join in, which is easy. We set it up for you, and all you have to do is contact the leads when it comes to your inbox. So that's one service we offer at the brokerage. So that's if you're interested, let us know. One thing I wanted to mention. So I like the other. So I don't think anybody really is doing much door knocking as much anymore. So it might be actually a really good time to be doing this. I don't know too many agents. They're all trying to do it online and everything. But this getting face to face is really important. I like what you said about I don't just work this area. I live here too. So it's in my best interest to get you the top dollar, because it brings my own house's value up. As we all know, CMAs are based on the recent comparables, so that's pretty powerful. So I would say give it a try. Do 30, 40 houses and see what kind of leads you can get from it, and if it's it might be working really well.
And my best recommendation to everyone listening is that here we are in mid-November, and if you're already starting to map out a strategy for your business plan for 2021, and I know we're going to be dealing with the pandemic and vaccine and repercussions well into 2021, so it's a little hard to be accurate or specific, but if you're mapping out your database and target markets to pursue, then I would recommend that over the quiet period of time of December through to early January, even though you're enjoying quality time with family, etc., during that quiet time, do a lot of the grunt work of fleshing out your database, doing your research admin, getting your ducks in a row, because then we all know that by about the 3rd week in January, things will start to pick up. And if you want to hit the ground running, where you've got your comprehensive database list ready, and you've been firing off things all along anyway, but if you want to then proactively target so many contacts per day, you've got the list already prepared and ready to go. That way you don't linger, spin your wheels, and then the 3rd week in January, when it's show time or go time, don't then have waited till then to start doing the grunt admin miscellaneous research collection. You'd have plenty of quiet time over the holidays to get your ducks in a row and have all that information, that ammunition ready to go and hit the ground running the 3rd week in January.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great.
And as far as the training, if you've enjoyed today, and it's a pleasure to be with International Realty Firm, they do such a great job. I also teach, well, I teach a total of 10 topics. We did a 1-hour version of this one today, but if you've enjoyed today, maybe in the future, we can send out, Kyle will send out a list of the different topics, maybe get your feedback if any of you want to tune in for another one. Each one is different and we cover a lot of information. Maybe the next one might even be longer, maybe an hour, hour and a half. I'll cover a wealth of information, all these other categories, but you can just give Kyle the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of an overview this time, and then we can dive deep into some of these subjects as we go forward.
Do you have any other questions though that they typed in?
Thank you very much, Michael. It's Abraham Tito here. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. I kept
Thank
quiet,
you. Thank you very much, Abraham.
Yeah.
Oh, you were listening. Well, if I had known that, okay.
Yeah, that's Abraham, one of our managing.
It gave me a lot of thoughts now running. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind feedback. Tried to do what we can in an hour, but it's mostly broad strokes. But we covered some good nuts and bolts strategies.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll dive deep into some of these subjects, namely, marketing and prospecting and stuff. Depending on what everybody wants. Let's see what everybody's feedback is.
And the other one that's popular right now, just to share with you, is one of my topics is improving your mindset in real estate sales, where it's almost like a group therapy session where we're all having a confidential discussion where I address all the psychological foibles and cobwebs in your head as to why you don't want to take consistent, effective action. And it really is great for ironing out the wrinkles and having you be a little more consistent on rising to the occasion and going for the gusto.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds great. Okay, any other questions from anybody for right now before we go? I'll leave a copy of this on our YouTube channel as well. So you can find that at internationalrealtyfirm.com/blog. We'll leave the link to it. And we'll do this again soon. If anyone's interested in the brokerage and what we're offering for realtors, that's internationalrealtyfirm.com/join. And Michael's website again is realestatelanguage.com. You can find his book there and also on the Trev store. And that way you can go into more detail, and then you'll have a good idea once we do more of these seminars too. You'll have some background info. All right, thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, Michael. That was great.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. And after we hang up here, I'm going to call you, Kyle, on your cell phone in about 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, thanks then. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.